welcome to the Speaking Podcast. You can find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com. We're also on BitChute and YouTube as Speaking Podcast. I also have the Awakening Podcast, the Learn Polish Podcast, the Meditation Podcast, and the Crypto Podcast, and all can be found on roycollin.com. And my guest, Jeff, is laughing at me because, yeah, he's kind of, I would class as a serial entrepreneur. So please welcome, I guess, Jeff Seckendorf.
Great. Thanks, Roy, for being here. Somebody once called me a parallel entrepreneur as opposed to a serial entrepreneur.
So I always like to ask my guests, you might let the listeners know, who's Jeff?
Yeah. So I come to this speaking podcast as a coach mostly and a mentor. So lifelong teacher, mentor with adults, things like that. So I started my career as a stills photographer and went into the film industry where I did, decades as a cinematographer and director. I shot like 1,000 commercials and tons of movies and music videos and things like that. And then when I sort of wore out in the film business, I had an opportunity 12 or 13 years ago to open a Scuba certification and training agency from the ground up. So I formed a company called UTD Scuba Diving, which is still running today. I still run it. And we're a global scuba training and certification agency with a slightly different bent on how we train. And then, so that's been a big part of my life. And then when the pandemic started, I formed another company called Coach Me Strong. And I do a lot of work for the Parkinson's community here in San Diego, where I live. And there was a lot of concern from the medical doctors and so on about people with Parkinson's unable to exercise when the gym's closed and the program's closed. So with a friend of mine, I said to the board at the Parkinson's Association here that, look, I have this coaching model, which we'll talk about in Scuba, and I'm a lifelong coached athlete. I race a bicycle. So I can take those two things, put them together and make a coaching program for Parkinson's. And they were all like, yeah, do it. So we did that about a year and a few months ago, right when the lockdown started. And it's been really successful to support that community and the community of people with other neurological issues, MS, Alzheimer's, traumatic brain injury, stroke, things like that. And then we also have a constituency I'm calling Gen OW for Generation Older Wiser, which is my version of what the baby boomers are. But what ties it all together is that throughout the whole thing, there's been this thread of teaching and speaking, teaching to, individuals, small groups, speaking to individuals, large groups, things like that. That's always come from what I think is sort of the master's journey, which takes you to a point where in order to really master something, I believe you have to teach it. And teaching leads to explaining leads to figuring out how to talk to people, and so on. So we'll look at education a little bit today too, as, really the classical definition of education, which is creating a change in behavior of your students. So that's kind of a little picture.
Yeah, no, excellent. And what I love is kind of, like the give back, the helping of others, because I've looked at your documentary on the Parkinson, and it was actually very enjoyable, and especially the song at the end. I thought that was beautiful, and I would encourage people to actually go in and listen. But you might let people know, because whether a person's speaking, if they're doing a documentary as well, because you have a good voice and your voice is there as well, but you might give some people some of the, as well as telling the story, because I think it's very important, because I know people that had Parkinson's as well, so to see something like that is inspiring.
So you're asking about the documentary process a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting. When I left the film industry, and of course, when I was making big movies and big commercials, I couldn't do anything without like six trucks and 40 guys and catering and all that. So when I had an opportunity to finally do small projects, I sort of focused on this documentary thing, coming from a really rich filmmaking background. So, definitely gave me a leg up on that. The Parkinson's documentary, which is, we took a group of 10 or 11 people to Mount Everest Base Camp on a fundraising trek, and 3 of them had Parkinson's disease. And it was powerful, man, to see these people do such hard work in training and to do something that was so past, so far beyond any vision of what they could do was just incredible. Documentaries, if done properly, I believe, are stories that kind of tell themselves. I really think you can just, if you open your eyes and your heart to what's in front of you in storytelling, I think that, with the camera as a tool, and photography as a vehicle, you can really find such intimacy and um, and beauty in these stories. Now, on that film, I was super fortunate to have an amazing co-conspirator in my buddy Chris Bruner, the writer and editor. So he really did an incredible job putting the pieces together and figuring out the chaos and making it a thread. Um, which is, all filmmaking is collaborative, even if you think you're doing it all by yourself. So that level of storytelling to me is powerful, and it reaches a broad audience in a very intimate way, right? We're in your living room.
Absolutely, because I find that you just want to know what's next. What's next? You're kind of
Yeah.
engrossed in it, you're going along the journey, and then you can kind of relate to somebody. You're listening to the story, and you're inspired by how they've actually, that they're actually climbing. It's like, because they're really pushing themselves, and it was very well put together, to be honest with you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
And documentaries interesting, right? If you have something to say, get a camera. Oh, and learn how to use it.
Make sure. Well, yeah, you do the scuba diving and stuff. I done a parachute jump, and I gave my friend, this is years back now when we had the tape ones, and he left the lens on. So I have zero pictures or zero anything of my solo jump. He left the lens on the guy.
Yeah. It's interesting, Roy, that kind of stuff. I mean, everything is fodder for a story, right? But when things like that become ephemeral, it becomes really interesting. I read this little meme about, I ride a bike, I train 5-6 days a week, and I'm I race at a national level and all that. But there was some guy goes for a bike ride, and he doesn't take his little bike computer that records data, and he doesn't take his phone, so he can't record the route, and he doesn't have a way to post it to Facebook or any of the other things. And when it wasn't public, he realized he hated cycling. Where really the beauty is in the moment, right?
Yeah.
Road or track, and turning the pedals and in your head and experiencing that. So I thought that was a really interesting play. Now, I come from a lifelong photography background, right? So I always had a camera. And more I find I want to do things without the camera, because I'm so much more present when I'm doing that. So I separate work and not work in that mode. If somebody asks me to bring a camera, well, then it's work, right? If I do it without a camera, then it's me.
I'm noticing that at whether a concert or a match or anything, everybody has their phone up. I don't think they're present. They're not actually experiencing what's happening. And I think whether it's a speaker as well, because sometimes they're trying to record a speaker. I mean, how many people actually go back and look at it? They think they will. And I think sometimes it's kind of like bragging rights. They want to put it on social media to say, oh, I've been to this event or I've seen this match. But they're actually not there. Yeah. And, it's a shame. I think you have to, step back and smell the roses.
Oh, completely. I mean, the whole thing of living in the moment and all of that is really about just literally living in the moment. And, it is crazy when you go someplace and you've got, 10,000 people have their phones up. It's like, I don't know, that wouldn't be me, but that's just me. I try to live a little bit more without Facebook than with. So.
No, that's good. So I always like to know the speaker coach's journey. So when you were younger, were you the guy that's up in front speaking to everybody, club president, or were you the guy at the back?
I was the guy in the middle, I think. Never shy, but always a little careful, I think. So the road for me was serendipitous, as was a lot of my career. But what I figured out early on was that So I was making movies, and I was a new making movie guy. And I found a workshop program that I thought would advance my skills. So I took this course on filmmaking. Um, and this was in the early 80s, right? And it was a guy who's still my friend who was teaching it, interestingly. But the workshop environment really fascinated me at that point. And I was probably still, still in my 20s. Um, and so I saw this as an opportunity. So I took this course and immediately started thinking about how can I be on the other end of the course? How can I be teaching or assisting or something? And so literally the following year, I was able to go back as a teaching assistant, as unpaid, go help. And I did that for a couple of years, and I got more and more interested in how I was able to take what I knew in filmmaking, which at that point was a lot, and present it to people who knew less and who were growing into the thing. So that started about a 25-year relationship with the Rockport College and what's now called the Maine Media Workshops, where I spent, weeks and weeks every summer up in Maine teaching filmmaking courses and really honing my presentation. I hate the word chops, but kind of like chops, right? Being able to distill out information and present it. And, uh, there's a joke in Scuba that for a new Scuba instructor should go back 5 years later and give his first 5 students their money back, right? Because a new instructor knows nothing. They barely know anything. So I was really fortunate, and I had like decades to really tune this and learn it. And I built a really good relationship with this organization, and I helped write curriculum, and I was doing big classes and regular classes and a lot of work in that environment. So I started looking at education as a concept. So one year, the director of that program sent all of the instructors a little tiny book by a guy named George Leonard called Mastery. Simple little book. And it sort of changed my life because through that book, I was able to really understand the master's journey as it relates to education. And this became key since then. So, and I've expanded on what was in the book and changed it and repackaged it. But I got to give a lot of credit to George Leonard for writing this thing and distilling it down to something so simple. So when you look at a master's journey, you say, how do you get to a point? And I do this with my students and people I coach and mentor. It's like on one side of a piece of paper, just draw a line on the bottom. On one side, you write discovery. And on the other side, you write mastery, which for me is teaching. And then what's the process to get from discovery to teaching? So, for me, the journey is discovery, training, practice, whoosh, long time, and teaching. So when you get to that teaching point, I really think you get to that point where you can say, now I understand something enough to get my students to not only realize what I'm showing them, but retain it. And I think, again, the difference between teaching something you kind of know and teaching something you've really mastered is your ability to explain it in a way that allows the student to understand it and connect it to something that allows them to retain it. Because retention in education is everything. So this is the same thing whether you're talking to one person or 1,000, right? You've got to figure out a way in whatever you're talking about or presenting to get people to retain what you're saying. Otherwise, what's the point, right? Then we're back to people not living in the moment with their cameras. And there are tools for that. This is not like some hocus pocus magic, right? There are educational tools that allow you to present information in a way that people will hold on to it. And the two most important ones are creating common ground and getting rid of jargon. So getting rid of jargon is easy, right? You just have to explain things in English or Polish or whatever.
Irish.
Irish, yeah, which I understand could be called a language. But the idea of common ground is really interesting to me. So, this was again distilled down from something Socrates presented. I don't know how many thousands of years ago. But basically the idea is the teacher can't teach the student anything unless both the teacher and the student already know it. Which sounds like a conundrum, right? It sounds like, well, how could that be? The teacher's supposed to teach the student something. But if you try to teach something to somebody with no connecting experience, it's almost impossible to retain it, right? I use an example in Scuba of trying to teach a bubble model, right? So a bubble model is a decompression model, and I start talking about, pressure gradients and Boyle's law and surface tension on a bubble as the pressure decreases. It's all just blah, 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 right? It doesn't connect to anything. But if I go back and I say, do you know what decompression illness is? And you say, no. And then I go back a little farther and say, well, do you know what the bends is? Yeah, I think so. And then you go back even farther and said, well, did your mother ever tell you not to go in the pool after you ate? Yes. Okay, good. So now we have a little something, right? You're 7 years old, don't have lunch and jump in the pool because you'll get the bends. All right. Bends is a sickness called decompression sickness. Decompression sickness is a process by which bubbles come into your bloodstream when pressure is reduced. Great. What's pressure? We can create a thread that connects you back to when you were 7 years old, having lunch and being told not to go swimming. But any little connector that happens between you and the information builds on that ability for someone to say, okay, it makes sense to me personally, right? I'm a pilot and flight instructor. I wish I paid attention in high school math because I didn't start using that until I became a pilot, 2 decades later. But, learning basic algebra and basic geometry didn't mean anything to me. It's like, why is x plus 2 plus 7? I didn't care. But when I got in an airplane, I had to figure out where I was going and all of that stuff. I had to go back and relearn all that with a connector that said, okay, I need this because now I have a use for it and I have a connection in my life to it. It became really easy to relearn that stuff. So common ground, creating common ground in any speaking environment is powerful, right?
Absolutely. And like, I know you've done a lot of workshops, so obviously if you spent time, doing it for free at the start at workshops and then creating your own, like, do you do kind of like half day workshops or do you do full day? And what have you kind of over the years, how would you give advice for people to kind of improve on the workshop? Obviously with the message, what you've just said is important, but structuring the workshop and how do you actually structure yourself for it?
So I think the whole thing can be based on common ground, and the secondary level of that is what we call building block education, right? So figure out the common ground that you can create between your students. Sometimes it has to be in the moment. It's like, hey, Roy, I want to talk to you about bike racing. What do you know about aerodynamics? Well, okay, so what do you know about a bicycle wheel? What do you know about where do we go with that to get you to a point where you connected to something real in your life? So, I've stood up in front of thousands and thousands of people talking about various elements of filmmaking, and really, you just have to be able to say, how do I connect to these people? Not through me personally, because who cares? I'm just a vehicle for information, but how do I connect to them through their own experience? How do I find some kind of commonality in this group of either 1 or 1,000 that I know will say, okay, they're starting to relate what I'm about to say to something in their life. And that's the whole thing. It's all of education is like that. All of speaking, all of presenting content is like that. So to practice it, to learn how to do it, find something you're really good at. Do this experiment of write down, where did you learn? Where did you discover it? How did you learn it? How did you practice it? And now, do you teach it? Or if you want to teach it, can you figure out how to connect your topic, whatever it is, to somebody's personal experience? I mean, you can do it. I mean, find something I don't know anything about, ask me about it, and then find a way to connect it to my life. It's, it's simple. It's not, I think the key to this whole thing is it's not complex. So if you are speaking and you have an opportunity to present, at Toastmasters or wherever you're going or anything like that, you got to back up. You got to back up and say, what's the behavior that I'm trying to change in my students or my listeners? What is the common ground that I have with them that will allow them to connect what I'm saying to their real life? And then how do I build on that tiny bit, tiny bit, tiny bit, tiny bit, tiny bit to get them to the point where they understand, oh, he's trying to talk to me about, a bubble model and decompression process in scuba diving, which 5 minutes ago I didn't even know existed. But because I connected it to going swimming when I was 7 years old, at least I'm drawn in enough to listen.
I remember I was a paddy cert, I don't know, a long time ago, and something, what do they call it, like a buddy, where you have a buddy that's you're connected with, you look out for each other. I forget.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, and basically we were practicing in a pool, and my buddy, instead of turning on the tank, turned it off, and as I'm falling in, surrounded by people, it's just like my oxygen was just gone. I was like, into the pool.
Yeah. So whose learning experience was that? Yours or his? Right.
Yeah.
But you can take that and create a story around that will connect to people, right? Did you ever get in a situation where you could not breathe? Right? Did you ever feel like it was hard to breathe? Well, so I'm saying, just always back up, always find commonality, and that's a great story for it, because everybody can connect to, oh shit.
And you must have witnessed a few different things. Like, we went off West Cork in Ireland to do the scuba diving. And when we were down, the instructor saw a conger eel swimming around us. But me and my buddy, we were kind of just enjoying ourselves. We ran out of oxygen, so we had to come up, and we were the first up. And the tide started dragging us out. And we were terrified because we were swimming. But then, thankfully, the instructor came out and said, when the tide is there, you hold on to the weeds and then just come in. But we thought we were dead, and it's like...
Scuba diving. Yeah, we started UTD scuba diving to present a training model that takes people past those horrible experiences. I mean, again, we built a scuba model on this common ground thing. So we changed the behavior of our students in scuba diving. So yeah, hopefully, you'll never have that. And, that experience, I often take a student and have them stand up in a pool with a regulator in their mouth, a scuba regulator, and just tip their head into the water, right? They're standing up and they're bent over in the water and they're breathing through the regulator. And then we turn off the tank so that you can feel what that like and turn it back on. So you get that experience. You say, oh, it's getting harder. This is not an instant thing. I'm learning. Again, it's how do you build experiences that people can, in your case, use to save your life, and in some cases use to, I don't know, learn how to sharpen a pencil. I don't know what it is. When I started Scuba, I was looking for an educational company to build. It turned out that I'm a scuba instructor and have been and love it and all that, but I didn't go out looking to start a scuba certification agency. I went out looking to start an education company. Could have been brain surgery, rocket science, car mechanics, pencil sharpening. I don't really care. It turned out it was scuba. And I used everything I knew about education to build that model. And then, my partner in that company brought a lot of the scuba intellectual property. So between us, it was a good fit. Because, once you learn how to teach, you can teach anything. It doesn't matter. I could teach you brain surgery if I had the IP in front of me.
I think, like for me, say the podcasting, because that's something that I'm actually working on building a course. Like, I read, I don't know, 8 or 9 books, and I've actually done other courses as well just to perfect it. And I've realized, people aren't doing it right. Like, to be honest with you, obviously, when I done the scuba diving, it wasn't, it wasn't done. And like, I have another experience with a parachute jump, because I told you like that your man had the lens on it, but it was 8 hours of training, which was great. They were jumping off apart onto the mats and doing all the different things. So when I jumped out, because you're on your own, there's 2 things that can go wrong. The line can twist or it can not open fully. And I had both. And my first thoughts is like panic. But then I just, because of the training, it was really good training. I was able to, I think you toggle for one and you just hold on for the other. It's been so many years, no? But the one thing that they didn't say, they say when you're landing, you pull the cords. So as I'm coming in, I do that. And I just come to the ground very fast and I break roll. I was lucky I was doing martial arts at the time, but a lot of people just went splatting to the ground and hurt themselves. They didn't tell us you do it slowly.
Oops.
Exactly. But and so it's like you would think that they would witness that and they would learn from that. But it's amazing just in coaching as well and everything that people, they don't kind of like sharpen the saw. They're not continually improving on the mistakes that they see.
So, I train zillions of instructors. It's kind of what we do in Scuba, and I've done it my whole life with different places and flying. I'm a flight instructor, and I've trained flight instructors and all that. There's really just, sometimes it distills down to there are two reasons to teach, right? One, because you have this vision of yourself as somebody who can change somebody's behavior in a good way. And the other is instructor ego. And if you start to believe your own story to a point where you're out there because you want newbies to think you're brilliant, then you have to reevaluate how and why you're teaching, because that's where those kind of problems come from, where an instructor is so involved in his own head and his own presentation about how cool he is and she is and how great it is, and that you lose sight of the goal. And the goal, of course, is change the behavior. So, your behavior was not fully changed in parachute jumping before you jumped out of an airplane. I mean, fortunately, the consequences of that would have been a broken leg, not probably a dead body, but you never know. So,
Exactly.
if you're looking, and this goes back to the core of what you're talking about on your podcast, which is speaking. It's like, why are you speaking? What motivates you to stand up in front of 1 or 100 or 1,000 people and tell a story? Is it because you want to talk about yourself? Or is it because you really have something you think can help other people? And if it's A, maybe it's time to reevaluate why and what you're doing. And if you really have something to say that you think can have an impact on people's lives, and it doesn't have to be like, you're not curing cancer here. It could be as simple as, anything, right? And I'm back to my little how to sharpen your pencil efficiently. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But do you have something to give people that will help their lives? Or do you have something to give yourself that will make your ego boost higher and, and damn to the audience? So got to look carefully at that, right? If you're doing this because you like the idea of standing up in front of people and the adulation and all of that, you got to rethink it. I mean, it's judgmental, but you got to rethink
Oh,
it.
I totally agree with you. And I mean, like, I see a lot of people, and I don't enjoy the speeches of the person that's just talking themselves, and they're not there for betterment of mankind. They're just to share everything that will help people. But like, say with the coaching as well, because I looked at the videos of the elderly woman with the young student.
Yeah.
So is that something that you're part of or that you founded as well?
That's the Coach Me Strong company, right?
Yeah.
So I founded that company, yeah, with a friend of mine. So, I built that the whole thing. We took a calendar and a communications platform, and we just got coaches and we got clients and we put them together. And it's the same thing I do with my coach, right? Every morning I wake up and I have in my calendar a workout on the bicycle, right? And it's structured over a period of time, and it's periodized and so on like that. So we just took that same model and use it for these people with Parkinson's or traumatic brain injury or MS or whatever they have. And I've found coaches who are brilliant at that, who work with neurologically challenged people, who understand structured training, and they deliver this exercise program daily, so people have some guidance. Our little tagline is to the doctors that You tell your patients they have to exercise, but we tell them how. So that coaching piece is really purely on the exercise coaching chunk of it. Uh, the coaching model in Scuba and, in leadership training and all of that, that model is really on educating and changing behavior.
Brilliant. And like with a team, because obviously with the directing and everything in making the films, not just the documentary, because that was obviously a small crew, but when you had, like you said, the big crew, how would you get them all to kind of collaborate? Because I'd say that must be tough with so many people around.
So I had a process at the end of every day where no matter where I had to be or what I had to do, I would walk to every truck and thank them. Super simple. So, it's wrap, they're getting gear together. I'm supposed to go off and look at yesterday's footage or whatever. And it's like, wait, I need a minute. And I would go to the grip truck and the electric truck and the camera truck and catering if it was there and makeup. And I would just walk in and say, hey, great job. Thanks. Next. And it was sincere. It wasn't like lip service. It was really sincere. These people are working their butts off to make us all look good, not just me, and not just a great movie or whatever we're doing. But I think that level of simplicity in gratitude and appreciation makes people step up. And it's not manipulative if it's honest, but I think it's the right way to live.
Absolutely.
So it's simple. There's nothing, because we can all be pains in the ass to work with and for, right? I mean, we all get that. We all get the moments, right, where it's like, you know what, I'm just going to be a dick right now, and sorry about that, and I'll apologize later. But we've got to get over this hump. But regardless of all that, at the end of the day, it's about gratitude.
Absolutely. And I think, because there is some people, they play it, but when someone's genuine. You feel it, they genuinely mean it. And you just know by the character of the person as well. Because sometimes, I've seen people on stage in the camera, they come across like the nicest person in the world. Off stage, you're going, is that the same person? I've seen like some real top speakers around the world that you would think are amazing and you'd aspire to be like that. And you look at them once the camera's off or once they're not on stage and you're going, wow, this guy is not, he's not living the life that he's portraying.
Yeah. And of course, it undermines the message completely once you find that out. So, that authenticity that you're trying to present to an audience I think it comes through.
Absolutely.
I think it comes through. I think you can't fake that. We talked before we started recording about, none of this is fake it till you make it. You can't bluff, you can't fake it. You just, if you don't know the content, don't step up. If you don't have a good reason for being there, don't step up. Just work on yourself and then step up.
Absolutely. And I know that I think from your website, you can see your resume. You have a very impressive resume, but you're also an author as well.
I've written a lot, right? I wrote a lot of the content in Scuba. So we've got, I don't know, a bunch of books and hundreds of online courses. And, I've got, I don't know, 15 half done screenplays like everybody else in California. But most of my writing is around content, educational content.
I suppose, because, just kind of wrapping up, but like when you're doing creating something and it's not accepted, it's like it's overcoming the rejection, because I know in speaking as well, sometimes people are trying to get on a certain stage or whatever, and it doesn't work. Obviously you can put a lot of effort into something and it doesn't come, you don't get, it doesn't close as you would thought. It's just part of the business. And I think it toughens your skin. So yeah,
you want to be rejected, get in the film industry. There's a joke that, in LA, what's the difference between a frog walking across the street and an actor walking across the street? And the answer is the frog is actually going to a job, and the actor is, about to go get rejected again. If you can't take that, man, don't go there. don't go there. But, and, there's the what doesn't kill you makes you stronger thing. I'm not sure I really believe that either. Right. I think there's a balance, because that implies that the journey's not fun. But, Roy, what we've been talking about for this time since we started is that it's the journey that's fun. Right. This goes back to the little George Leonard book, right? I mean, he talks about the plateau theory of education, which is, particularly in Western society, we learn by taking an educational jump and then getting on a plateau for a while. And then you take another jump and you get on a plateau and so on. And, in Western society, we are obsessed with those jumps, those highs you get from learning something and trying something new and experimenting with something. But the cool part of life is on the plateau, where you get to use and experience all the good things around what you just learned. So, again, it's like slow down, smell the roses, and enjoy that plateau, enjoy the moment, enjoy the journey and the process. I mean, bike racing, man, there's nothing more telling. If you don't like the process, if you're out there for a result, which is, a, whatever it is, a single race over the course of 3 months, and that's what you're working for. If you don't love the fact that, the training's hard and you're training every day, and, I'm doing an hour record attempt, which is how far can you ride your bike in an hour? I'm doing it next week. So I've been training this for months and months and months. And really the whole thing is culminating in this hour, and the hour is just execution. Right. I mean, it's going to be fun. Well, it won't be fun while I'm doing it, but it'll be fun after and before. But the process is the enjoyable part for me, getting stronger, getting better, getting mentally tougher to be able to stick this thing out when it hurts and so on. That process, if you can't love that process, even if it's hard, the outcome, if you're outcome oriented, it's just not fun. If you do the process, the outcome becomes inevitable. This is what we tell the coaching clients with Parkinson's, right? If you do the process, if you exercise every day like we're prescribing for you, the symptoms of your disease will improve, right? If you just try to improve the symptoms of your disease by thinking you should be exercising, it won't work. So our job is to convert people to loving the process, because it's a lifelong process.
Beautiful. And how many miles typically can you do in an hour? What's the...
That's like the big question, right? I mean, the standing record now is like a little over 55 kilometers, which is insane, right? I mean, if I get 40, I'll be really happy.
Yeah. Do about 15 in an hour.
I mean, it's a thing, right? This hour record is iconic in cycling, and not that many people step up to it. But again, you've got to love the process, not the ride.
Yeah, and I think that's everything in life, isn't it? It's like we discussed it from the start with the cameras and everything, be present. And some people, they think it's for, oh, when I get this house, when I get this car. Nah, it's all about every day. Wake up every day, enjoy every day. As you said, when you're cycling, you're enjoying it, even if you're pushing yourself, but you're loving it. What's the point in doing it if it's just to get a result? That doesn't make sense.
The result goes away. The process lasts forever. Sounds the opposite, right? Oh, the gold medal lasts forever, and I did the process to get there. But for me, it's the opposite, right? That gold medal or whatever you get, that's like poof, right? The process is what changed you as a human being.
Absolutely. It's like the Toastmaster, because I was very late to the game with public speaking, and it's like 4 years only, and I used to be terrified prior to that. And I kind of went to get this DTM, which is the Distinguished Toastmaster, and I done it within just over 3 years. But it was like, I didn't even take a picture of it. I have the frame now below, but it was all, as you say, the process, all the different competitions, all the different club meetings, just everything that was just thoroughly enjoyable. And now it doesn't mean nothing. It's like you say, it's the medal, yeah, whoopee-doo, great. But
yeah,
my memories isn't getting this plaque. My memories are all the fun that I had with the different speeches, meeting the different people, and that's what it's about.
Yeah. I mean, I hang up wherever they are, the finishing medals and the stuff like that, because it's fun. I mean, I like the fact that I did it, but I look at those things and it's like, it's not the first place thing that turns me on. What turns me on is the fact that I trained to get to that point. I trained the process, and the process is what got me to that point. The outcome, like I said, is inevitable.
And I think that will apply to all the, people that are speaking. It's all about the journey and making sure that you're doing different things. You don't, like, even if you're learning from a certain person, like as we discussed with the scuba diving, make sure you try a few people, because some people will be a lot better,
Yeah. I think, as you go through these journeys, you get to choose your points, right? Where do you want to be and why? And it's easy to pay lip service to I'm living in the moment, because that's what people say, right? And it becomes kind of a cliche. But if you actually practice that for a period of time, it's life changing. It really is life changing, because all of a sudden everything is more fun. And people ask me if I want to do a particular project or a job, or I met with potentially new clients for this education, as part of my education consulting thing, and I literally sat in this meeting at the end of it and said, well, can we make it fun? Is it going to be fun? It looks like it's going to be fun, but if it's not going to be fun, I don't want to play. It's that simple to me, is that I don't want to have a miserable day, right? I want to have a fun day every day, right? I mean, this is fun doing this and, talking about all this stuff, but it's not because I have this big ego about talking about myself and all this other stuff. It's because, I've explored all these topics and subjects within various elements of education for 40 years, and I'd love to share it, but it's not because I think I'm brilliant at it. It's just because I figured it out and I can share it and hope somebody else can learn from it. And that's really the key to the whole thing, right? Is like, that's part of the training people to live in their own moments. It's true. It works. It's true. It works. It's not fake.
No, definitely. And what I love actually is when somebody's got a skill, obviously you've been able to train people, setting up the coach me, for helping elderly people, but the Parkinson as well. Like I love when I see somebody actually using their skill set to help others. I think there's a lot don't. And I think the fact that you're using your skills to help so many people is what it's about.
Coach Me Strong was interesting that way, Roy, because everything else I've done feels like it indirectly helps people, right? Movies are entertaining, documentaries are entertaining. Scuba, we help train people to be safe divers. But in Coach Me Strong, this is the first company I've ever had where the results directly impact somebody's life, and it feels so different. And it feels so much more powerful, that direct impact on somebody who's getting helped by nothing more than me putting a few disparate things together, right? Bike racing, education, coaching, I just put that together in a package. And I didn't reinvent anything or do anything out of the ordinary. I just came up with this concoction that helps people. And it feels amazing. Really feels amazing. That's the satisfying part to me. If you wanted me to talk about ego, it's me saying, wow, I found a really successful way to help people.
Yeah, love it. And I think, that's the secret. When you do something that you're helping others, whether it's mentoring someone to be a speaker, education and everything, the feeling that you get just from seeing somebody kind of going from the caterpillar to the butterfly. It's you, like, we're talking about just living each moment every day and just seeing these little journeys. I mean, you must obviously see the clients, just how they appreciate it.
It's huge.
Tis you're benefiting from what you've created something beautiful, but did you actually get the love back? And so that's why I'd encourage people, just try to think about humanity and giving back, because it's actually you benefit from it.
Yeah, just be authentic about it.
Exactly.
Do it for all the right reasons.
Listen, Jeff, thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. So how can people get in contact with you?
So Coach Me Strong is coachmestrong.com. Scuba is utdschubadiving.com. And then the education consulting and leadership training, we didn't really talk about this program either, but it's on a program called thetrainingscycle.com. So it's thetrainingscycle.com. And all three of those sites have contact information for me.
So I'll make sure that we put all the links on the podcast description as well as the video. Listen, Jeff, thoroughly enjoyed our conversation.
Awesome. Great to talk with you, Roy.
So that's all for the Speaking Podcast. You will find all our episodes on speakingpodcast.com or on BitChute and YouTube. Be sure to give us a thumbs up, 5-star rating, share with your friends. Until next week, take care.